Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of September 4th, 2024. Still reviewing all the books. Rocky's back. That might change. Not Rocky being back, but we were just talking before recording about maybe switching things up a little bit and not doing all the DC books because, I used to do New Comics Wednesdays in addition to the DC Spotlight where we talk about non-DC books. And don't always get Marvel in time, but we definitely I get plenty of independent stuff that we could talk about. And that's really what is like scratching my comic itch right now. Like I'm reading so much independent stuff that's amazing. So leave a comment down below, everybody, if you'd like us to scale back on DC a little bit and not talk about every single book. I mean, what more can we say about Si Spurrier's Flash? It's kind of been there, done that. That will free us up to do and talk about some other independent stuff as well. So, but I get it. Like all DC All In is coming, all new story arcs. Maybe we got to do the first issue of each new All In title. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But Rocky and I were catching up. He was on vacation, well deserved, last week, and I kind of wanted his. I'm sure all of you are curious too. Last week was a big week. I reviewed them all myself. If you didn't know, it was over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. It didn't get as many views as Rocky normally does because I think a lot of people didn't know where to find it. But it's over there if you're curious, if you want to go back. But I'm also curious what Rocky thought of some of these books. So we're going to go down just super quick recap of last week so Rocky can give his thoughts on some of these books, if he even remembers. It's been so long. Kicking it off with Absolute Power Task Force 7, issue number 5. That's with Velocity, the Amazo robot that has super speed powers.
Sure. What I liked about that issue was there seems to be a common theme with the Amazo robots on Absolute Power. They seem to be sort of developing some sort of human emotions, and it seems like they didn't. Clearly, it's such the case like the Amazo robot Velocity, similar to Jadestone. He seems to be. They didn't just absorb the superpowers of the heroes, in this case Velocity absorbing some of the powers of the Flash, but they also seem to have absorbed some of the human emotions of it and perhaps even some of the morality. And that makes it very interesting. And I think that's such a fascinating idea, absorbing, because the series is called Absolute Power, and of course we have that cliche phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely, power corrupts absolute, power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power is corrupting Amanda Waller. And yet, ironically enough, it's the absolute power absorption by the robots that might be uncorrupting them, because they're also absorbing some of the morality of the hero. So I think that juxtaposition of that is that seeming contradiction there, that story element, I think that makes for a very interesting story element, and I like what Mark Waid is doing there. And finally, the crime syndicate showing up there with Donna Troy leading the crime syndicate. It's so great because you and I have we've sort of tacitly complained, either directly and indirectly, about what about Earth 3, her time on Earth 3. It's so great to see the crime syndicate show up. That's the fail-safe plan, not to be confused with the character, but the actual default plan that Amanda Waller has to rely on the crime syndicate. I like the fact that it's led by Donna Troy and no longer, and not Ultraman, who we know is actually dead because of the Tom Taylor Adventures of Superman, or that series. So in any event, I really liked those aspects of that story.
Yeah, full review. I think a lot of the morality stuff is actually getting into stuff for this week because it wasn't explicitly mentioned in that issue, but we can kind of extrapolate. What about Absolute Power Origins number 2? Amanda Waller doing more Amanda Waller things.
Well, I listened to your review, and I think you've been very, very scathing with respect to Amanda Waller's character. I think that, quite frankly, there is, for Amanda Waller experts out there, and while I know a lot about Amanda Waller, and so do you, I think all of us, I mean, she's been around for, 20, 30 years. I like what John Ridley did there. He did a lot of what he's done in the history, in his various books that he did of the sort of the hidden history of the DC universe, where he's taken Amanda Waller and he's done a masterful job, I think, of, it's not a perfect continuity-wise sort of retelling, but he's taken all the stories of Amanda Waller, her history with the Suicide Squad, infused it with new ideas, with new origins, as a way to make it all coherently make as much sense as possible, given that he's trying to fit Amanda Waller into her current iteration and her current motivations to where she's at. And I think that he's done as good a job as as anyone could probably reasonably expect a writer to do, given the fact that he's dealing with a lot of material, which, in fairness, it would be hard to reconcile all that because there's been some, I'm sure there's some inherent contradictions there. So overall, I thought he did a really good job, and the job, of course, is to make us both understand Amanda Waller and probably hate her enough to rank her as an A-list villain. Whether or not people think he succeeded on that is up for individual readers to decide. I still have mixed feelings about Amanda Waller, but I have to admit there's enough more going on in Absolute Power that I really like the plot points and I like the action, and that's ultimately I like this so much better than a Crisis, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody can not still try to decide if Amanda Waller is bad or not. Like she's awful. 37 years. She's been around 37 years. You're
Wow.
right. She definitely was not close to anywhere near this evil, except maybe in the last decade, a little less than a decade. So it is a recent development when you think about the fact she's been around for 37 years. Nice House by the Sea. Leaned into Nice House on the Lake characters. We didn't even see any of the Nice House by the Sea characters. Are you okay with that?
I am okay with that, but I can absolutely see that I hate to say this, I'm absolutely invested in the story. I love the story. I have some idea, or I feel I still have a good idea what's happening with the story, but I know some other reviewers, I've listened to other reviewers online, and some of them feel a little bit lost. And if you've forgotten any aspects of that first 12 issues, I can see people being a little bit lost myself. I still feel invested because we reviewed it and we loved the original series. And I remember reading each issue 2 or 3 times and taking notes, and a lot of that's still with me. So I found there was a lot of Easter eggs and rewards in that second issue, but being as objective as I can see maybe newer readers being a little bit lost with it.
Oh yeah, definitely not new reader friendly. I don't think we need to ask about Power Girl number 12. Let's just move on.
Yeah, that's all right.
Batman Dark Age number 5.
I like the. I enjoyed. I like the. I like Mike Allard's art. That still continues to. I love his style. Writer Mark Russell's done a really good job. I think of telling his own story for Batman. I like. I'm still curious as to what part Pariah has to play in this and how it affects the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, how that ties in. Pariah was sort of seemed to be head of Wayne Enterprises, but now he stepped aside to allow, I guess, Ra's al Ghul to take over, with Ra's dying at the end. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm enjoying it. I'm still enjoying it more than Superman for all ages, or the Space Age, whatever. So I enjoyed it. It was good. It continues to impress me.
Yeah, they're neck and neck for me right now, and the series is making me a fan of Mike Allred's art, which again, super talented. It's just never been for me, that thick line weight. But yeah, I'm quickly becoming a fan of Mike Allred based on Batman Dark Age. We don't need to talk about the Flash. Move on there. Batman Brave and the Bold. So I probably don't need to talk about the Dead Man Nightwing story. That one did feel like it went on a little longer. But I'm curious about the last story as well, with Mal, Duncan, and Bumblebee. But the other two, curious your thoughts on the Renee Montoya question story. And then the other one that was a couple of cops, a rookie cop and a veteran cop in Metropolis, kind of a day in the life. I thought that was done really well.
I can really only comment with my memory. I apologize on the Renee Montoya one, because that was really the one where I'm not a huge fan of Batman Brave and the Bold anthologies. I like the Renee Montoya one. And my own little nitpick about it is that, we know that Renee Montoya is ultimately going to be becoming the Question more full-time and being in charge of the Justice League satellite in October moving forward, she's going to be placed in charge of security for the Justice League Unlimited. So we know that she's no longer going to be commissioner, and this is really the story that explains why she loses, why she basically gives up being the commissioner. And
hold on a second. Hold on a second. Like, you're not wrong, but I mentioned this when I wrote my article about the announcement for the upcoming Alex Segura Question series.
Okay.
With I can't now. all along the Watchtower, right? Name of that, I think it was a Doors song.
Okay.
But anyway, like she already lost her job as commissioner in the pages of Chip Zdarsky's Batman because Vandal Savage is the commissioner. But in the pages of Detective, she's still commissioner. And
you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah,
so
that's right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mentioned that when I wrote the art. I was like, I don't understand how all these fit together. When is she the commissioner and when is she not the commissioner? So it's almost like it looks like Alex Segura is telling us the story of her losing the commissioner's job, but she already it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I stand corrected, and now I am as confused as you. But in any event, I suppose in theory, it's nice to have a little bit of a cover story as to what how her tenure as commissioner ended. That appears to be the story, and I think it's been well done. So I enjoyed that the most. I don't recall specifically enough the rest of the stories. I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe at the end of Zdarsky's run, Vandal Savage loses his commissionership and she's reinstated, and then this Alex Segura story takes place. I don't know. I don't know. Zatanna bring down the house. Zatanna finds out she does have magic.
Yeah, I actually that is one that's not only has that surprised me. I have to say, honestly, I wasn't expecting much. I'm surprised how much I've been enjoying that series and how much the characters are actually growing on me. Even the one with that the green-haired character, which I found annoying at first, has sort of grown on me. And then the antagonism and the character work that Marika Tamaki has done on Zatanna actually makes it entertaining. And surprise, surprise, I've heard anecdotally, I've not got no facts to back this up, but anecdotally I hear that sales are pretty well. And I think that was through Bleeding Cool or something. So it's nice to see. We got Poison Ivy, at least in the early issues, there was a sales spike, and I think Zatanna's done well. And Zatanna, I think that the first or second issue of Tamaki's Zatanna series, it's been in the top. One of the DC has taken a pretty harsh sales hit across the board, but I think Zatanna's even in the top. Might even be in the top 100, or which is, believe it or not, is actually good for DC for a character. And I actually enjoy it. It's not the Zatanna that can really fit neatly into the continuity of the mainstream DC universe. But I actually don't care. I love the character work. It seems very well done. And Tamaki seems to have something to say about Zatanna. And she's always good at, this is a younger Zatanna who has gone through some degree of trauma that maybe she's forgotten. She's more powerful than she realizes. Maybe she actually stole her father's magic, and some other shenanigans might be going on behind the scenes. But I think that I'm actually invested in the story. And that's a compliment to Tamaki, because I went in with a bias to not like it. And I like it.
Yeah, we'll skip Constantine, Hellblazer, Dead America, because it was kind of a transitional issue. I don't think there's really much there to talk about. Detective Comics, it's the penultimate. We're finally, next issue 1089, finally finishes off the Ram V run. Yeah. This one really felt like a lot of stuff was coming together. We saw Two-Face against the werewolf. We saw Mr. Freeze go up against the guy with all the extra arms. It was like all these people pairing off against each other. It was a lot of fun.
It really was. It seemed like Ram V has always been. We've been up and down with him. There's been some issues I feel like they dragged on for so long, and then in this issue we got multiple players coming into play. So much was happening. It was actually a really good issue, probably one of the best issues. And I believe you said you hint. I'm sure you. I recall you saying essentially the same thing. That's one of the better issues because so much happened, but it was substance filled. Something was happening. It actually felt we were moving toward a resolution. And Batman was just cool. There were some real cool, epic Batman moments where Batman's kicking ass and taking names, and it was some really cool moments. And I really loved the resurrection of Prince Arzin. And I love the fact that the Queen, Organ Queen, is definitely going to get her comeuppance. And I love the ten-eyed man, I think his name is, and how he took on Mavud. Am I going to say the name wrong? Yeah. But yeah, in any event, I really liked it. So many moving parts to it. I obviously don't have time to get into it in detail, but I could talk for much longer on it. But I actually think that it was absolutely one of the better issues. Of all our frustrations with Ram V, at the very least, it does appear he's going to hopefully end this series on a bang.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, without question, the best issue of the series. Multiple times I'd said, there's no chance I'm going to go back and reread this in its entirety, and that issue made me consider it.
Yeah.
I got other stuff to read right now, but I would consider it. What about Green Arrow 15? We see Green Arrow maybe turning on Bright, turning on Amanda Waller to rescue Leanne and
I thought it was a good issue. I keep what's it's not tainting me, but I keep thinking of Mark Waid's the interview you did with Mark Waid, where so I keep waiting for some misdirection with respect to Green Arrow, because he really does seem to. I'm still wondering why Amanda Waller hasn't seen through what appears to be Oliver Queen's obvious. Like, he's obviously faking working for Waller, but yet maybe is he? It just seems odd. I like the callback at the beginning where because there was a Justice League story way back in the day, or a Green Arrow story where he was given the power to take down the Justice League. I always thought that what he was given was just was something that was fake. He wasn't actually given something that could take down the Justice League, but it appears that he actually was. So that's an interesting callback. I love Cheshire. I love how she was kick-ass here. She's like the mother. She's more than willing to lose lethal force. I love the fact that the Green Arrow family needs. Cheshire is probably the equivalent of the Jason Todd of the Green Arrow family, for lack of a better way of putting comparison to another superhero family. I love that Cheshire is not afraid to lose lethal force. She's kick-ass. She's badass. She refers to Roy Harper as her lover. So one gets the sense that she's perhaps wants to rekindle something with him. She's also a loving mother, albeit with a lethal streak, obviously. And she's kick-ass. I just love her. And when Green Arrow shows up, because he doesn't like what Blight's doing, he wants to be able to control what Blight is doing, or to have some semblance of control. Obviously, I enjoyed it. I thought it was, it was action-packed, and I still think there's too many members of the Green Arrow family, but I enjoyed this story nonetheless.
Gotham City Sirens?
I just proofread it. I don't really have much to say, although I love Julian March's covers. I got all the connecting covers. I think the fourth and final connecting cover I have waiting for me at my local comic shop. But Leigh Williams did, I think, a decent enough job by crafting a story that unfortunately the respective artists on the title didn't take full advantage of, to rendering the sexiness component needed to be elevated in my purient old man white fanboy opinion.
Fair enough. Batman Off-World #5. Batman gets the shit kicked out of him.
Oh, I got to tell you, this was probably in competition with another one from what would have been my book of the week. Man, it would have been between this and the 0 Hour issue. I really, really liked it. I love the art by
Doug Mahnke.
Thank you, Mahnke. I love his art, and I love the Asgardian. I mean, he's so badass. He's like, of course, he's
Thanagarian.
Thanagarian, sorry. Thank you, Thanagarian. So much going on in my head. The Thanagarian, he's a cool character. Reminds me of Batman too, with the same sensibilities. And I love the seeming betrayal. Is it the betrayal of Ione? Is she, she seems to have betrayed Batman and the Thanagarian. And the Black Sun brothers, the Black Sun crime syndicate,
twins,
the Black Sun twins, and one of them was the Whisperer, and now Batman's captured, and so's the Thanagarian. So you just know next issue Thanagarian and Batman are going to have to reluctantly team up to escape the Black Sun crime syndicate, and it's going to be a kick-ass issue. And man, Jason Aaron is just firing on all cylinders, and yeah, definitely it would have been between that and another title you'll ask me about.
Give us your thoughts on 0 Hour. That was my book of the week. Had to be. I mean, such nostalgia. The costumes, the art styles, fantastic.
Well, I mean, here's to the surprise, I'm sure, of no one. It's the 30th anniversary of 0 Hour. If I'm brutally honest, and I have to be, I actually forget the main plot points of 0 Hour. I don't have this stuff right enough in my head. I mean, I always, to borrow the expression, I have a good memory, but it's short. I mean, but what impressed me was when I read it, it's like everything sort of came back, the general plot points. And then to find out it's actually a new story. And it's a way of revitalizing that same sort of nostalgic feeling I had, and especially the love between Kyle Rayner and Donna Troy. I love that element of it because Kyle Rayner has had some pretty significant love interests with Donna Troy, and then he even had Serenik for a while there. And I mean, he's had, and then of course we know what happened to his girlfriend Alec with Major Force and the women in refrigerator type of scenario. But I loved the love. I almost viewed it like a love story, even though there was a hell of a lot of action to it. And the idea that there was an aspect of Parallax that still created his own world. And it was so cool. And it was fun. It was fun to read. And it was fun to read this other world. It was like reading a glorified what if story or an Elseworld story. And it's cool, and it's still going to continue. And even though the world may have ceased to exist, we know that it probably still exists because Parallax still exists from that timeline. So it's not completely disappeared, and there's a promise of more to come. So I'm in. I found it much more exciting than the Doomsday. I wasn't a big fan of what Jurgens did with the Doomsday thing. Even though he did a good job on that, it just wasn't my cup of tea. But I love the Zero Hour because it involves more of the DC heroes. And I love what Jurgens did because Jurgens wrote that 30th anniversary Zero Hour special, much like Mark Waid is writing Absolute Power, which I like. They're cramming a lot of action and character work in a small amount of pages, and it's more compact, and you get more bang for your buck. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, Zero Hour always holds a special place in my heart because they promoted the crap out of that for the entire year of 1994. 1994 was the year that I had a comic shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In 94 into 95. I was open 11 months, didn't quite make it a year. So from March of 94 to February of 95. But yeah, so yeah, I remember getting all the promotional material and VHS tape with interviews of creators and yeah, all that. So yeah, I remember it fondly. Anyway, let's dive into the books for this week, everybody. Kicking it off with Batman, Robin, and Howard, Summer Breakdown, issue number 3 by Jeffrey Brown, colors by Silvana Breese. This is just fun. It's just a really fun story. There's a little bit of a recap at the beginning. Interesting, as I mentioned, that they decided to go single issues for this and then collect it as opposed to a lot of the YA stuff where they go graphic novel. And then, based on the success of it, they did it with Batman, Robin, and Howard, the first volume. And they also did it with Primer, where they released it as single issues. This time they're going the other way, but this will be collected eventually. But one thing I will note is this issue 3 has a lot more dialogue than the previous issues. These are all pretty heavy dialogue issues, but this one is even more so, this issue 3. A lot of exposition, a lot of word balloons, which is fine because it's for younger readers, for readers that you kind of want them to be strengthening their reading skills. It's fun. It's lighthearted. The art from Jeffrey Brown is very consistent and fun, as is the personalities. It's not exactly recognizable as the Damian Wayne you would recognize from main continuity. Same thing with Lois Lane. Same thing with Lex Luthor. Same thing with Batman himself. That might be the biggest departure. He's kind of a clumsy dad in a lot of ways. Doesn't have the dad bod, but makes the terrible dad jokes and is a little out of touch sometimes, like older dads can be. I include myself with that. When I hear my daughter using slang, I'm like, what the heck does that mean? But anyway, it's a lot of fun. I know it's not for everybody, but if you have younger readers, if they're interested in superheroes, it's definitely a book that can introduce them to the idea of comics, reading sequential art, that sort of thing. Make a fantastic bedtime story. So, all right. Up next, we have Plastic Man No More, number 1. This is from writer Christopher Cantwell. Alex Linz is the artist. Jacob Edgar handles some of the flashback pages, 9 through 11 and 16. Marcelo Maialo on colors, and Becca Carey on letters. This is a Black Label book, so it's out of continuity. I've highly been anticipating this book, and it did not let me down. First of all, the art is fantastic, starting off with a little bit of a look back at who Eel O'Brien was when he was a criminal, and there's a little bit of it's like a one-page sort of collage. It says he goes to prison, he gets paroled, he continues to try to be a criminal. He falls into chemicals. He becomes Plastic Man. He gets married. He has a kid. And 20 years later, he's a member of the Justice League. He's always been played somewhat as a humorous character. Maybe it's the sort of zaniness of his powers. I think back to one of my favorite cartoons as a kid, the Plastic Man Adventure Hour, where it was Hula Hula and Plastic Man and his girlfriend Angel or whatever, and they would go on wacky adventures. And it was just a heck of a lot of fun. Even though he's been at times in the regular continuity, he's a tough character to write in regular continuity because, again, you want to lean into this idea of him as a humorous character where nobody takes him, he doesn't take himself too seriously, nobody else takes him too seriously, and that's sort of where Cantwell plants his flag here, right? The fact that nobody really takes him that seriously. So at the beginning of the story, when he has to step in and sort of save the day with this supervillain that has this alien weapon, and he's going to fire it at these kids. He says he's going to vaporize these orphans, and Plastic Man basically stretches himself out and blocks these kids. What basically happens is that, and it sort of feels like a sunburn for him. But what actually happens is later that night, part of his body starts to break down, and he goes and sees a scientist at a plastics expert at Wayne Tech. And she says, yeah, basically you're dying, like your molecular structure is breaking down. Can't say for sure it was this ray. It might have just sort of accelerated what was going to happen anyway. And so he's faced with his own mortality. And when he goes to the Justice League and he tries to tell them what's happening, they either don't pay attention to him or they just kind of laugh it off. Oh, there's Plastic Man being Plastic Man again. So he's kind of left to sort of solve this on his own, as opposed to, I think back to other stories where a hero is dying and everybody rallies around, right? Like, I know it's not DC, but think about maybe the most classic graphic novel of all time, the first Marvel graphic novel, The Death of Captain Marvel, where, they were on the Titan, the moon, and everybody came, thousands and thousands of miles. Everybody came from Earth, all the geniuses, Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Hank McCoy, Beast, Doctor Strange. They tried everything. Let's do everything we can to try to, save the life, because it's one guy's going to die, and everybody showed up. Here's poor Plastic Man. He's a hero. He's saved lives. He's helped save the world, the multiverse, whatever. He's dying. They aren't really aware because they don't take him seriously, and nobody's lifting a finger to help him. So what's the poor guy to do? Great start for the series. Perfect art. Love the voice that sort of tragic voice that Cantwell gives Plastic Man, right? Because it's that whole idea, like, not to be too morbid about it, but some of the people that make us laugh the most, it's because they're hurting so much inside. Like, I think of Robin Williams, right? Like, maybe one of the best comedians and actors of all time, but suffered from terrible bouts of depression and ended up committing suicide. But yet was absolutely hilarious. This is sort of that, right? This idea of this guy that's everybody loves to laugh with and laugh at and not take too seriously. But then, what is he like? What do you not know? What is he not telling you? What is he hiding? What is he keeping? He actually tries to tell him. Nobody's listening. So, I was expecting a lot from Christopher Cantwell, and he did not disappoint at all. So, what are your thoughts on this first issue?
I had mixed feelings about it. I'm not as I want to be clear when I say that this might be a masterpiece in the workings, but right now I've got mixed feelings about it because and I'm not. I say my comments are no reflection on the good or bad. I will say that when I initially read this, I got actually upset at how I felt that Plastic Man, it felt a little bit forced to me that Plastic Man was made to, I guess we're supposed to feel sorry for him because the Justice League, who I thought initially when I first read it were written out of character. They were almost cruel to Plastic Man, as if Wonder Woman is not going to recognize when he's actually hurting, or Batman is not going to, I mean, it felt a little out of character for me. But then I had to remind myself, well, wait a minute. This is in fairness, this is a Black Label book. This is different. And that if Plastic Man's always been the Joker and he's always brushed things off and he's got this dire need to fit in all the time, he wants to be accepted and he himself always brushes it off. So his friends in the Justice League are going to brush it off too, because it's hard to get to know Plastic Man when he's never opening up and exposing himself. And then when it's revealed that he hasn't seen his son in 6 years, it's like, really? This guy who's so funny, he wants to get along with everyone, but yet clearly doesn't, and the only one that can relate to him on the Justice League is a monkey, Bibbo. This is kind of pathetic. And he hasn't seen his son in 6 years. And so I was looking for something in this first issue. Okay, well, when did he become a deadbeat dad? Or when did he become a bad dad? When did his relationship with Angel fall apart? Now, I'm comparing this, and this would be unfair of me to do so because it's Black Label, it's a different continuity. But I can't help but think that, well, I thought Plastic Man had a good relationship with his wife. Or at least one where I thought he was more respected by his son. I remember Justice League's tales where Batman elevated where I remember Batman I think it was a Morrison comic, said the most powerful person on the league is Plastic Man and nobody knows it. And like I remember stories of Plastic Man was kind of cool. He was elevated. Here he's like, it's the opposite. And that's fine. It's Black Label and Christopher Cantwell's got something to say. All right. But I'm still wondering, I'm still trying to get a handle. Okay, well, when did his life fall apart? Why did he suddenly decide to not have a relationship with his son? And his son has got powers like him. He only meets with his son in this issue because Plastic Man himself thinks he's dying because of what's happened to him with this ray blast, and his molecular structure is destabilizing and he might be dying. And if he's dying, it might be something that his son should know about because his son has similar powers to him. So it was fascinating, but I haven't quite got a handle on yet. And it's not clear to me that Christopher Cantwell, I'm not sure what his handle is on the character. I never really completely bought into this because I don't know about you, but I found it fascinating that the Justice League sort of put him down, and then Plastic Man himself was kind of an a-hole. He put down Diana. He called Diana under his breath a snot. He called Hal Jordan, mocked him as being a green god. And then Batman's so cool. He's muttering that to himself as he's going back to his on the one page, and it made me wonder. Well, this is a guy that was always joking, is behind the scenes. Maybe he always had some resentment. Maybe he resents the members of the Justice League. Maybe there's some hidden resentments there because he's always trying to get their attention, and yet he's not trying to get the attention of his own family. So there's a tragedy here to this character this is why I said Christopher Cantwell is doing actually a pretty brilliant job. On the one hand, saying, my God, this guy's really screwed up. He's trying to get the attention of people that are kind of ignoring him as the jokester, and yet the people who care about him or could care about him, he's ignored for 6 years. There's a tragedy here, and and I guess that's real life. I get it. That's what makes it, I guess, Black Label. So I guess it's good. It's good. I'm invested. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to play out, and I still think that there's more revelations about Plastic Man that can be revealed here, because I'm thinking that this Plastic Man isn't all jokes. He's not all this isn't all laughs. I think he's got a darker aspect to his personality, because at the beginning he was a thief, and then all of a sudden he becomes a hero. Did you really lose all that darkness all of a sudden? Because I don't know if he did. And because Cantwell is clearly working with his own continuity here, he's not really following the continuity that I'm aware of. I'm not an expert on Plastic Man in the mainstream. I'm not. I'm just saying in my recollections, Cantwell has gone in a different direction than I thought. He's subverted my expectations a bit, and I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I think it's potentially brilliant. On the other hand, the jury's still out.
Yeah, I mean, if you've read, here's the thing: if anybody who's read some of Cantwell's non-Big Two work, you sort of expect this subversion and this tragedy. Anybody who's familiar with his series on AMC, *Halt and Catch Fire*, yeah, it's sort of real life. There's tragedy, mixed in with the human drama and what have you. But this is the first time he's sort of bringing this to a real superhero. If anybody read his Vault series, *The Blue Flame*. Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. This idea of being a hero, being a superhero, but being tragically flawed. And now he's bringing that to Plastic Man. So yeah, again, what I expected, and he knocked it out of the park. Whether or not it'd be well received by Plastic Man fans is another. That's another thing altogether. This had to be Black Label, right? Because there's going to be people that are fans of that Plastic Man cartoon from back in the day, like I am. They go, no, you can't go dark with Plastic Man. Can't do it. All right, up next we have Poison Ivy. There's a few different creators in this one. See if I can. I think they're all listed in the beginning. So there's Rewilding Part 1 and Part 2 from main series writer G. Willow Wilson, Marcio Takara, who's the main series artist, and then Arif Prianto on colors. Then we have a couple interludes, Beneath the Surface, but from Joanne Starrer as the writer, Hanning as artist, Yvonne Placencia on colors. Mushroom Hunters from Grace Ellis, Brian Level as the artist, Arif Prianto on colors. Boots and Handbags from Gretchen Felker Martin as the writer, Ataguin Ilhan on art, Deborah Villahose on colors, and then The Pro Fight by Dan Waters, Danny as artist, and Brad Simpson on colors. Throughout the entire issue, we've got Hassan Otsman Elhau doing the letters. So even though this is, I guess it's supposed to be an anniversary issue, 25 issues of Poison Ivy, it's basically Poison Ivy sort of wanting to clean up from the last remnants of what's been going on in the series. Most recently, in terms of stuff with Jason Woodrow and making sure that the Lamia spores aren't still a threat and all that sort of thing. And so she sends various members of her team, her support team, whether it be Killer Croc or Poison Ivy or Janet from HR or what have you. They all go out on their own sort of separate missions. And again, it ties back into some of the stuff that we saw before. So I thought this was okay. Like, I get that it's the 25th issue and maybe you want to do some stuff that hasn't necessarily been done before and kind of celebrate Poison Ivy. I mean, she's never had a series that lasts anywhere near this long. So I get that, but I'm more interested in seeing where this goes forward next, right? And I talked to G. Willow Wilson about that at San Diego Comic-Con, because really the first 24 issues were all telling one story, the story of the Lamia spores and what have you. So where does it go from here? And this, I don't know, it felt like we're sort of treading water. Like it was like, well, DC said, well, you're going to start a new arc, right, G. Willow? But if that's the case, then we should wait for the All-In initiative to start. So how are we going to fill in that one issue? So this just felt a little bit like a fill-in issue, more so than anything. It didn't really move the story forward or what have you, or really give any hints as to what's to come. So yeah, I just thought it was okay. It's not going to be memorable in the long run. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, my thoughts are a little bit more positive than you. I would say that my impression is that one of the first stories is Beneath the Surface. It's an old Batman story written by Joanne Starrer, and it really highlights what I think is the more evil nature of Poison Ivy, which is interesting because we're being reminded that Poison Ivy's not always been a nice person. That she has the last 24 issues have been sort of have portrayed Poison Ivy. She's evolved from basically a terrorist into someone who's more humanized. She's more of a props and anti-hero now. But we're being reminded, at least in one of the stories here, that she has an evil side, a dark and a psychotic side. We then I think we have this almost looks like a comedic duo who end up becoming the Mushroom Hunters, who, as a result of ultimately being infected by being exposed to Ivy's blood or Ivy's lamaspores or whatever it might have been, they end up becoming the Mushroom Hunters. So I think that this might be J. Willow Wilson's attempt to give her more of her own sort of like quasi rogues gallery. And this Mushroom Hunters, these Mushroom Hunters feel to me like to be almost like Ducks Unlimited for for Poison Ivy, and they almost seem like they could be a comedy relief, and yet I think they're going to have a more deadly component to them. And so I was intrigued by that, and And then Killer Croc seems in what he seems to come across something where he's a town seems to appear out of nowhere, and I think this might be again. Everything's related to all the machinations that have occurred in that of the previous 24 issues, and I think it's building to something. So I found that interesting. And Pyrophyte at the end, this character, I'm not sure. He ends up being sort of a terrorist that ends up. I'm not sure. I mean, it was a terrorist who he's obsessed with Poison Ivy, and so it suggests that maybe Poison Ivy has a following of eco terrorists that because at least one person did, and so it makes me wonder if Poison Ivy might want to move on with her life, but I think that because of her past as an eco-terrorist herself, and because of her complicated past and her Lamia spores and everything else, I think that her past is going to continue to come back to haunt her, and I think this is what J. Willow Wilson is setting up here. And I like at the end, there's even a hint at the end in terms of what's going to happen in the future, blooming in 2024 and beyond. It shows the gardener, and it shows Janet from HR, and it shows other individuals, the mushroom hunters, and it looks like and it shows Swamp Thing and some other characters and Jason Woodrow. And so it looks like there's definitely more adventures to follow, and I like that. And I like that Janet from HR is being kept along with Poison Ivy and Killer Croc. This group of four is actually, I think it's interesting. I wish my one little pet peeve. I wish they'd rock the boat on the cover art. I wish the cover art would be more reflective of the content, because my one pet peeve is you could take any of the past 24 issues and switch the covers, and you'd be none the wiser. And that's I think that's a legitimate criticism. But aside from that, I thought this was a pretty good jumping on point for new readers.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you're right. If anybody is looking to jump on, this is probably a good issue for them to do so. All right, up next we have the Trinity Special, World's Finest #1 from writer Tom King. Belen Ortega handles the art. Alejandro Sanchez and Tom Bonvillain on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. This is just collecting a bunch of the backups from Tom King's Wonder Woman series into basically one volume. So they're sort of fun. It's sort of tongue in cheek. You get some samurai, you get some corgis, you get time traveling Trinity, who's incorrigible at times. You get some Kite Man. You get some bickering of Damian Wayne and John Kent. So they're a lot of fun. It has a little bit of a different feel. I do sort of wonder if this is the right way to release this with, it says Trinity's World's Finest and collect it, and, for people that haven't been reading Wonder Woman but are looking forward to the Trinity series, because I don't think that the tone that's established here, which is much more of a playful tone and a humorous tone, I don't think that is going to play out in the Trinity ongoing that's coming later, where we get Trinity, a teenage Trinity, kind of a preteen Trinity, and almost a toddler Trinity, much younger age Trinity, teaming up together to take on, I think, the Sovereign. Details are still a little sketchy on that. But I just wonder, you're trying to get people interested in Trinity. Is this the book? Again, not that this is bad. It's a fun, and it's funny, and the art is fantastic, and the colors are great, or what have you. But I just don't think this series, this particular title and these stories are going to have much in common tonally with the Trinity ongoing that's coming later. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, you're not wrong in my mind, but I really feel, and this is, I feel this is a legitimate criticism. When I say that this isn't for me, that's really sad, because if it's written correctly, it should be for everybody. But this is really not for me. I don't like Trinity, and I don't like this character. And where's her parents? I understand that the whole central conceit of this, I suppose, is that, she's constantly, every single one of these stories is her being babysit by John Kent and Damian. Why? That doesn't make much sense. They're 18, 20 years older than she is. They're supposed to be 16, 18 18 years older. But clearly DC is going to be all wonky with the time frame and the aging up. And I guess I'm not supposed to care about that. I should just focus on the stories. Okay, I'll focus on the stories. They're fun, but they're also juvenile, and they shouldn't be in the mainstream DC universe. I don't want this Trinity to be aged up in the DC universe for the same reason I thought it was a mistake that John Kent was aged up. But I suppose John Kent, I'm liking him more and more. I like John Kent more now in Absolute Power than I ever have. So I guess a bad introduction of a character, of which Trinity, I think, has been a very, very poorly handled introduction, can still be, in the long run, I mean, it might take a few years for me to warm up to Trinity, but, it's going to take more than, these sort of juvenile tales to captivate me, because this is something that I consider to be like really a joke. This is something, am I supposed to, I can laugh and giggle along with some of these stories, but where's her mom? Where's her, I want to get to know Trinity. This is not me getting to know her. In my mind, I don't even, what's the context here? It just seems you said it. It's completely out of place. It feels out of place. It looks out of place. Beautiful art, but it looks out of place. And so it's hard for me to get excited. And I hate even criticizing it because I don't want to be a negative Nelly. It's good. It's fun stories. These are fun stories. But, to me, it's about organically getting to know a character. And this just doesn't cut it for me. And, but hey, at least it's all in one place. That if I'm the older guy that doesn't know what he's talking about, good. The good news is for people that want to love Trinity, all her tales right now most of them are contained in here. And and this is the new legacy Trinity, and hey, all the power to them. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, up next we have Absolute Power number 3, The Last Stand, written by Mark Waid, art by Dan Mora, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Ariana Mir. Give us your thoughts on this.
Okay, I'm just sorry. I just want to wait till the thing pops up on the screen here. Action-packed galore. Man, I love this. I made a comment before about what I like about Dan Jurgens writing that 30th anniversary 0 Hour special, how much action was crammed into it. What I really like about Absolute Power, what Mark Waid's doing here with great art by Dan Mora, is so much is happening. I actually feel more so in this issue than in the build-up's been good. I actually feel that there are stakes. I feel this more. I can't emphasize enough how happy I am that this isn't actually another DC crisis. I like that the fact that there's actually some decent character work going on. I like the fact that Amanda Waller, at least leaving aside my issues with her, the fact of the matter is that she's a villain that I love to hate. And that's good. We're not supposed to like the villains, the bad guys. So good. I love the villain. I love to hate the villain. I love the fact that, what's happening with these Amazon robots, how something's happening that Amanda Waller, there's kinks in Amanda Waller's armor. She anticipates everything. But it's clear that things are happening. She's discovering that when you really get power, especially when you try to control superpowers, there's always the little things that come back that happen that you are not anticipating. And one of them, of course, is the fact that Velocity and Jadestone might be developing some degree of morality because their programming is almost too perfect. I like that because it forces us readers and Mark Waid, as a compliment to him, we're getting to know these characters and we're intrigued, or at least I'm intrigued as a reader, what's going to happen with all these Amazon robots. They're starting to feel each unique unto themselves, which is really good. I love the fact that the heroes are on Paradise Island. I thought it was a good incorporation of the fact that Queen Nubia is upset with the heroes because, of course, the U.S. government is still against Themyscira because of what's going on in the pages of Tom King's Wonder Woman. Leaving aside the fact that that storyline isn't developing very quickly in Tom King's Wonder Woman, at least it's referenced by Mark Waid here, and we can understand Queen Nubia's reluctance to let the heroes on her island, but she knows that it needs to be done because the world's in crisis. news because finally Amanda Waller has betrayed the U.S. government in this issue. It's absolutely confirmed. She doesn't need the U.S. government anymore. She even has fail-safe, basically shit talking the leader of China, for God's sakes. I mean, they're really kicking butt and taking names. And Amanda Waller, she feels she's on top of her A game, and she's going for broke. I love the use of John Kent. I love the discussion between Big Barda and Nightwing. I like Mark Waid's characterization of Big Barda here. He understands that Big Barda is not afraid to use lethal force, and Big Barda makes it clear to Nightwing, basically, I know you don't want me to kill John Kent, but we got the world at stake, and somebody's got to take him out, I'm the person to do it. And of course, Big Barda is. And in fact, just as a quick note, I wish Big Barda in the pages of Birds of Prey would exert a little bit more of her lethal tendency in Birds of Prey, because she's not afraid to use it. She's not like Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain has learned from Big Barda. It's these slight differences, the nuances, these nuanced differences in characters that are so important to make these stories resonate with me. And that's what I love about that particular aspect here. Aquaman and friends they're aboard a U.S. battleship where they use the Black Mercy plant against Bizarro, which harkens back to that famous Alan Moore story. That was excellent. So I love the Easter egg there. And I love how John Starr, Time Commander, is rescued by Aquaman, and ultimately Batman thinks that the Time Commander can be used to restore the powers to all the heroes. I love the fact that we have a revelation that despite this absolute power storyline, despite Amanda Waller's directives, the fact is we're getting new metahumans, new superheroes, new people with powers are creeping up. We got 3 new characters here, which I believe are new. I might stand to be corrected by yourself or readers in the chat, but there's a character, Cadejos, Rana Dorada, and Glacier. I think those are all new metahumans, new potential superheroes. They're rejecting Waller's propaganda. I love that. And just, there's more at stake here. And I love how John Kent is being used, how Mr. Terrific combines his knowledge of science with Io on Themyscira, her knowledge of magic on the island, and Artemis's strategies in order to, when Superman or John Kent lands on Themyscira, it disrupts the programming, the circuitry that the Brainiac Queen has on John Kent. And I love the reunion between John Kent and his dad. There's some really heartfelt moments here. So we get action, fantastic art, and the crime syndicate's nowhere to be found here. And I'm so looking forward to the confrontation with the crime syndicate. But I really love this. There's references to the other series. There's references to Black Canary over in the pages of Green Arrow. There's references to Superman and Zatanna finding the magic roots and the black paths in order to avoid detection by Amanda Waller and the Amazo robots. I thought this was a really great issue, and one that really it did its job. I love this, and I haven't even mentioned Airwave, Hal Jordan. I mean, there's something in here for everyone, and again, I could go on. I love the fact that Flash, at the end of this issue, he's had a mysterious voice directing him ultimately to the Supermax prison on Gamora. Who is this mysterious voice that's guiding Wally West, the Flash, to discover that Amanda Waller is building a multiversal army? We don't know who the voice is yet, but we know that Wally's likely going to be the first person to confront the crime syndicate, much to his dismay, I would imagine. But in any event, I thought this was a fantastic issue. I loved it. This is what big events are supposed to be about, and I quite enjoyed the ride. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not enjoying it quite as much. I still feel like, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, that my expectations were a little too high for this event. Because I just feel like Mark Waid has been there and done that before, like he's been part of things like 52, the weekly series and what have you. This just still feels like there's a little bit missing, and maybe it goes back to the fact of the structure, like the way DC structures their events now. We've talked about this a lot, where it's like, the Spine series, instead of being 12 issues like it used to be, then down to 10, then down to 8, and then 6, then with all this ancillary stuff. So everything is condensed, right? So you think about like Crisis on Infinite Earths, that took a whole year to come out. And maybe they just don't want that. They just don't want events to take that long anymore. So everything is on a condensed timeline. They're putting out more material in a shorter period of time. But then if you're only reading the Spine series, I just feel like a little bit of something is missing. And we'll talk about this when we get to the Batman book. This is the last book we're going to talk about today that has a backup that, for the life of me, I don't understand why. It's a fantastic story. It might be my favorite story of the week. And it's so important. Like, why is it in Batman? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it needs to be in the main series. So again, I'm sort of nitpicking because, like you said, when you look at the individual events, right? Like when you look at, like you said, the putting the Black Mercy flower on Bizarro, like that's just a cool moment, right? Like seeing Yara Flor show up going against Black Alice, that's a cool moment. What's going to happen with John Starr, that's a cool, like there's all these cool moments. But again, I just feel like, based on the structure of the story, based on the amount of pages that are in this issue, and how much needs to be covered in a short period of time, it feels a little choppy to me sometimes. And again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm expecting too much, because there are some fantastic moments that are like, oh, that's an awesome scene. And Dan Mora does a fantastic job with the art. This idea of them shooting John Kent with the kryptonite bullet, and him trying to fight off the influence of the Brainiac Queen, is another fantastic moment. But just because you have all these great moments strung together doesn't mean that it makes a good, cohesive story. And I just wish the connectivity between the moments was a little stronger. And again, I'm nitpicking, and if this was somebody other than Mark Waid, I'd probably be like, oh, this is fantastic or whatever. So maybe it's on me that I've got way too much expectations. I mean, if I sit here, honestly compare this, like you want to talk about another series that was or event that was super choppy, like really bad, we could talk about what was it? Not Dark Knights, Death Metal. What was the? What was it?
Of what? Sorry, I missed.
The Scott Snyder event.
Death Metal.
Not Death Metal. The one that came before that
was Metal. Wasn't it?
What's that?
Wasn't it just Metal?
Yeah, well, I think it was just Metal, right? Where the Batman Who Laughs showed up for the first time. Yeah. So if I want to talk about an event where it was moments and not enough connective tissue, we could talk about Metal, right? And this is way better than Metal. And then we want to talk about an event that ramped up and tried to have even bigger moments and had even less connectivity between those moments. Then we could talk about Death Metal. Maybe I don't know. It's a toss up between, for me, Death Metal and Night Terrors for the worst DC event of the past, 5 years, 10 years, however long it's been. Those are neck and neck as just awful. And then just behind them, but really trying to catch up and be just as bad, would be Future State. But Future State had a couple titles that saved it. But anyway, all three of them super terrible, and certainly Metal and Death Metal, just all about the moments and no connectivity, and didn't work. And so I don't want to make anybody think that I think Absolute Power is to that level with not enough connective tissue between these moments. But again, I've come to expect more from Mark Waid, and it could be that it all comes together by reading everything all together at once when everything is done. But I just wonder about the constant decision to release these series like this. Like, it baffles me that the events that happen in the Batman backup story aren't in the main series. So Anyway, let's move on. My Adventures with Superman. Issue number 4 is up next. Written by Josie Campbell, art by Pablo Collar, colors by Nick Filardi, letters by Lucas Gattoni. I don't really have anything new to say about this series, and that's not to say that this series is bad or isn't worth your time or what have you. This series is awesome. It's amazing. It is everything that Josie Campbell told us it was going to be when she came on the show. It is the holiday Christmas episode that they wish they had time to do that would have fit in between season 1 and the upcoming season 2, or it might already be out, season 2 of My Adventures with Superman. Superman, Christmas time, it's definitely a theme in this story with Ma and Pa Kent there, trying to give Clark a good Christmas, even though it's his first Christmas away from the farm and away from Smallville. And you wrap all that up with this version, the My Adventures of Superman version of the Amazo robot, who has quite a bit in common, as it turns out, with Clark, with Kal-El. And the title of this whole arc is called The Ones Who Fell to Earth. And we get the explanation for that, the title in this issue, where it talks about Amazo was in some way maybe alien tech or has some memories of being out amongst the stars and fell to Earth. And that's where he was basically captured and then turned into the Amazo robot, like we saw in the first season of My Adventures with Superman. So he has a connection with Clark, and it's just a fantastic job by Josie Campbell, and the writers on the show do a fantastic job as well. Even though this is a different iteration of Superman, a different iteration completely in terms of, Lois learning early on that he's Clark Kent. Jimmy's different. Like a lot of things are different, but they're getting the things that matter right. Like the fact that Superman cares, the fact that Superman is going to fight for the little guy, the fact that Superman will always look to make connections. He will always reach out. It's always an open hand reaching out to help, as opposed to the closed fist, punch first and ask questions later. That's just not who Superman is. So you pair that with the fantastic art that looks exactly like the art does in the show, and you end up with a really powerful story. Even though it was August when I read this here and hotter than hell here in Phoenix, 110 degrees, I got some Christmas vibes, got some holiday vibes. Christmas is a big deal in my house. As people have probably followed me on social media know how many trees and lights and whatever we put up. This was just fantastic. I think there's one issue to go, and I'm really looking forward to how this wraps up. And again, I also love the callbacks that if you watch the first season, you'll get more out of this. You'll see characters you recognize and events that you are referenced that you'll recognize. And I'm looking forward to going and reading and watching season 2 of My Adventures with Superman and see if there's any callbacks to this story in this comic. So that'll be really cool and a little bit of a payoff for those that watch the cartoon and read the comic. So, all right. Up next, we have the finale of The Penguin from writer Tom King. Rafael de la Torre is the artist. All Bad Things is the name. Marcelo Maiello handles the colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. I don't have a heck of a lot to say about this other than I think it did what DC wanted it to do. Well, two things that DC wanted to do, right? Like they wanted a comic out there on the stands that retailers can sell to people if they watch the Penguin, the Colin Farrell Penguin show, and I want to know more about the Penguin. You go to your comic shop. Hey, I watched the show. Do you have any Penguin comics? Yes, we do. Here you go. Here you go singles. Here you go trade paperback. Here whatever. So that's number one. Number two, we talked about this a lot. Leveling up the Penguin, making him feel more formidable, making him feel more menacing, making him feel more like a threat, much like DC's done recently with 2015 or whatever it was, Batman Year Zero, where the Riddler got leveled up. And then obviously the Joker, I guess Killing Joke. I mean, that's been 40 years now. But yeah, making these, and it sort of had to happen. We talk about the power creep of Batman. Batman's getting more powerful. He's able to jump from the moon. He's able to go out off-world and fight Thanagarian bounty hunters and not get killed. You got to make his villain. You can't have, the Frank Gorman or a Riddler or the Burgess Meredith Penguin or the Cesar Romero white painted mustache Joker. You just can't. You can't have those. You can't have those bumbling villains that are Batman 66 villains to go up against a guy that can jump from the moon and survive. You just can't. You got to level him up. You got to make him more of a threat, bring him up to Batman's level. So I think that was the other thing that DC wanted this series to do. I said I've never been a big fan of the Penguin because I've always felt like, the whole idea of him puffing on the cigarette holder and loves birds and has the umbrella but Tom King even gave us an in-story reason for why he has those affectations. You strip all that away and just get to who this guy is. I still have a little bit of a hard time believing, because he's just a short, chubby, fat dude, and yet he wields all this power and gets people to do what he wants. He's very manipulative, but I don't know. I feel like if everybody turned on him and nobody did what he said, if all his henchmen formed a union and went on strike, who would he have? He does manage to manipulate the help into helping him. But if everybody just turned their back, this guy, he has no inherent physical power himself, and yet he's able to exert his will, which is kind of interesting to me. And I think Tom King succeeded in making the Penguin feel scary and feel like a real threat to Batman. And whether or not I want to buy into that or not, I have to do what I say all the time. I tell Rocky all the time, I got to believe what editorial tells me, right? If I'm reading this universe and they're telling me people are scared of the Penguin and the Penguin threatens them and they're too scared to take the chance and not do what he says, and so they do it, and that's just a reality. So as much as I feel like if I was there and this fat short guy told me, with the long nose told me to do this, I'd tell him to go stick it. But again, if he has other people willing to carry out his orders because he has something over them, some sort of hold, he has information about them, or he's blackmailing them or whatever, that's power. And he has amassed a lot of power. And in this series, Tom King has the Penguin showing that he wields that power in a way that is truly terrifying and allows him to be in a place where he is a worthy foe of Batman, for sure. Especially because at the end, there's a conversation that he has with Batman about, Batman's like, our deal is off. You came here, you did all these terrible things. I'm going to, any last words before I, lock you up and throw away the key, basically. And the Penguin's like, hold on a second. The government sent me here. Here he is manipulating. Here he is pulling the strings again. The government sent me. Don't you want to work with me, Batman, and figure out who these corrupt government officials, blah, 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 right? Always with a story. Always with a spin. Always with the kind of the puppet master pulling the strings. So, I think, again, it did the things that DC wanted to do, and it did them very well. It's a book. It's a Penguin book. It's out there. It's high quality. Anybody who's interested in learning about the Penguin and heads to their comic shop will have this as a great introduction to the Penguin and a great introduction to the world of comics. And it leveled up the Penguin. So, yeah, hats off. I guess I had more to say about this than I thought. I thought I was going to be short, but as I started talking, there was more there than I realized. So, how did you think it ended? I think overall you probably liked the series better than I did, Rocky, because you're more a fan of the Penguin. But how did you feel it wrapped up?
I love this. I thought the whole series was great. I thought I've never been more interested in the Penguin than I am now. It just makes the most sense. Now, to be honest, obviously there's been some really great Penguin stories that have been told over the years. And if you're a diehard Penguin fan, I can see people being upset that, you could, the major reason why I think some people might be upset with this series could be a number of things. First is that this sort of it almost suggests that Batman is trapped, that he can't do anything. Batman's going to decide to not arrest the Penguin, to not apprehend the Penguin, because the Penguin has such a compelling argument, and so I guess Penguin can always get away with whatever he wants to get away with. Well, if this isn't the straw that breaks the camel's back to make Batman apprehend and throw Penguin into Arkham Asylum, what is? How many more people does he have to kill? Do you really need? I mean, how much more evidence do you really need? I mean, Batman, you're going to let him get away with it? If not now, when? I mean, it's just, so you can criticize. Also, let's not forget another big thing here. Penguin knows that Bruce Wayne's Batman. That's clearly established here. Now, I don't know. Again, people will please correct me. How long has the Penguin known that Bruce Wayne is Batman? I haven't really thought about it, and I actually don't know the answer to that question. Isn't that new? I mean, maybe it's been suggested in the past, but has the Penguin Batman's going to turn Penguin into the authorities, okay? And then you think Penguin's going to be silent about your secret identity? I mean, so that makes more blackmail sense to me than anything else. But in any event, I like Penguin's true superpower, and it's not an actual superpower, but he knows people. He knows what makes people tick. He knows what makes the Black Spider tick. He knows what makes the Help tick. He knows he's got a gorgeous wife who despite being repulsed by him, actually wants to sleep with the guy that managed to cause that much chaos. She's kind of a sick sexual predator herself, that St. Clair character, but he's got a gorgeous wife, and he rejects the gorgeous wife that's loyal to him. He rejects her over in Metropolis, as he does at the end of this issue, because the Penguin is just kind of an evil, rotting little penguin bastard. He really is a piece of human garbage, but he's so powerfully manipulative, and he knows people. He gets into your head. This is a guy who, at different points in this series, would spend months preparing and planning and planning and planning. And look at how sick this guy is. He genuinely has no love for his children, and he went out of his way over 12 issues to plan the deaths of his kids, killing his son with his umbrella while sitting by and staring into his daughter's eyes as the Black Spider puts a bullet through her brains. I mean, let that sink in for a second. And I mean, we thought what he did at the beginning, at the end of the first issue, and pulling the poor blind lady that he was taking care of at the beginning, how he was an evil bastard. I mean, this is the Penguin. This is a new level of just indifferent horror. And you have to wonder, Batman himself, if Batman, you got to wonder, does Batman even know the half of what Penguin has done? I mean, probably not. Or maybe if he does, it's hard to imagine Batman not taking some action against Penguin. And because Batman usually has principles that he stands by. And, I think an argument can be made. And again, this gives, if you're really into a certain interpretation of Batman, you could say Batman would never let Penguin get away with this. On the other hand, I mean, look what Tom King did with the Riddler. He had Batman arguably kill the Riddler at the end of Riddler, Batman One Bad Day Riddler, which we really enjoyed. But if it's in continuity, it's kind of it throws a little wrench into continuity, arguably. In any event, I liked it. At the very least, you get the gist of what makes the Penguin tick and why this fat little insignificant character has the power he does. So overall, I think this is a great series for people that want the Coles Notes version of the Penguin. This is the series to pick up. Sorry, you're on mute. Sorry
about that. I would definitely agree with that. Up next, we have Justice Society, issue number 11, penultimate issue. Hard to believe we have an issue of Justice Society out.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, Geoff Johns is the writer, Marco Santucci on art, Mikhail Yanin handles the cover, Ivan Placencia on colors, Rob Lee on letters. I really enjoyed this. This is an issue that feels like, it reminds me of the potential of these characters and the Justice Society team in the hands of Geoff Johns. That being said, it feels truncated, it feels rushed, which, how ironic that it takes, 4 months to get an issue of Justice Society to come out at all, and then when it comes out, it feels I'm saying it feels rushed, but it does. It feels like
rushed. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like this whole entire 12-issue Justice Society run, like if it was Geoff Johns back in the day when he was focusing on his DC work, this would have been like 36 issues of content because he would have fleshed it out more. There would have been more going on. It just, I hate to use that word, but it just would have been, there would have been more to the story. And that's not what we're getting. That's not what we're getting here because it's not what Johns is concentrating on. He's concentrating on his Ghost Machine stuff, which his Ghost Machine stuff is fantastic. But the Justice Society, unfortunately, is a casualty of that. So, yeah. And again, this is another one of those things that's like, much like Flash or Power Girl, how often can I say the same thing over and over? It has potential. The art's fantastic. But at the end of the day, it feels like it's being phoned in a little bit. So,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, it's sad that, you and I are both longtime DC readers, and our review of this issue, which was good for the truncated story it is, but it just feels so underwhelming. It feels like we could have experienced an entire war, but instead we got the 1 hour Cole's Notes history version of what this story was. I mean, my God, Mordrow's come back in time as a young man and he wants to join the Justice Society. And then we get this long story told to us through exposition and some pretty cool splash pages, but really truncated. And the Legion of Superheroes shows up, the classic 30th century heroes, not the 31st century Bendis Legion of Superheroes. The ones that I love, of Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. This is what I love. This is what I live and breathe for as a kid. And this is tickling all my nostalgia bones, I got to tell you. And the story is just, it's a good enough, it's a decent story, but without the details. It's like seeing a chocolate cake and that chocolate icing, but there's no chocolate cake under the icing. It's like, what? Come on. I want more of this. It's so truncated. But the story itself is kind of cool if I tell it in generic terms, but literally my summary would be as long as this comic is because it's that short. And it's cool to have Mordrew show up. It ends up Mordrew was Eclipso is the main villain here. He possessed Wildcat, and he had previously killed the Yolanda Wildcat, and Mordrew ends up going to the Huntress, and he basically imbues one of the Huntress's arrows with magic, and he destroys the Eclipso stone, the soul stone that empowers Calypso. So essentially, this trapping Eclipso in his gemstone again, and then this all leads to the formation of a Justice Society of America in the 30th century, which is really cool. But are we ever going to see adventures of that group in the 30th century? Probably never, at this point, because they're Geoff Johns babies. But in any event, all in all, it's a long time coming. This has been such a long delay, and despite the fact that it's kind of a big deal, we got a new Justice Society in the 30th century. Why does this feel like this ends on a whimper? It's just this. It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is kind of sad. And it's a little bit frustrating. So, I mentioned to you, Rocky, that I had rearranged my whole studio last weekend. And man, I was sore for like 3 days, having to move, 60 long boxes and what have you. It was, it was not my idea of a good time. Not what I would say is a good time. So all that being said, when I was going through, I took all the long boxes out, so long boxes are in these drawer boxes that 12 across and stacked 5 high. So 60, and then plus others. That's just like on one wall. And then others, like my desk is made out of long boxes and all that sort of stuff. So I did all that. And then I was so tired when I was putting them back in, so sore. And my hands hurt real bad because the cardboard on those drawer box handles really tears up your hands. So anyway, long story short, I just stuck them back in. I didn't label them, and they weren't in the correct order anymore. So then this last weekend I went through and I opened up each drawer box and I looked in there to see what it was, and I like labeled it because they're half sorted. Half of them are alphabetical still and the other half are chronological. I'll get them all chronological eventually. But my point is this. When I got to the Legion box, it's a whole long box that's just Legion. Just LE, Legion. Like it's more than a whole long box of Legion. And it got me thinking, man, the Legion was such a huge part of DC for the longest time. And they put out so much Legion content for the longest time. And what do we have now? Like we have nothing. We have nothing. There's not even. There's
the X-Men. They were competing with the X-Men at one time, and they fell so far from grace. It was such a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, even after it was Levitz and it was best selling, whatever. Then that went away, whatever. But then even when Keith Giffen came in and did the 5 year later Legion, it kind of was a little bit of a resurgence. And then even in the late 90s or early 2000s, when you had the Mark Waid run with Barry Kitson art, even that actually, even that was like really good. But then ever since the New 52, it has not gone well for the Legion. And I mean, a lot of Legion fans were excited when Bendis came on and he was going to do it, but it didn't. It was not good. And how the mighty have fallen when it comes to Legion of superheroes. So. Anybody who's seen them show up in the Justice Society, our Legion, like you talked about, like Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, like the classic, gave me the feels. All right, up next we have Robin, it's just The Boy Wonder. It's the Juni Ba, written and drawn Black Label series with colors by Chris O'Halloran. For some reason, there's not a credits page. I couldn't find a credits page in this issue, so I don't know who the letterer is, unfortunately. But this was by far the best issue of the series. I felt like this kind of made me understand why they did the series, because I had said before I was a little critical, like I didn't understand the point of it, because we've had so many Damian Wayne stories before. But Juni Ba did a fantastic job of really bringing it all home with Damian's own words and Damian's own emotions, with him fighting against Ra's al Ghul and him fighting alongside his mother and his father, and kind of giving motivation. And so kind of similar to what we were talking about with the Mariko Tamaki on Zatanna book, or the Penguin book we were just talking about, as really introducing new readers to these characters and having you understand them really well. I think this Boy Wonder series is a really good representation of who Damian Wayne is, despite the fact that it's out of continuity. And Juni Ba's art won't always be for everybody. It's a very stylized version of art. But that being said, there's some fantastic art here. There's one page where Batman shows up. It's hard to tell. Like it sort of seems like that perhaps Damian doesn't even know that his dad is there. Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it there on the screen. Damian doesn't even realize that his father is there to support him in this fight against Ra's al Ghul, and Batman just shows up and just like right hook, and sends Ra's al Ghul flying, and it's an amazing page. So, yeah, I didn't start out as a big fan of the series, but I think it's fair to say I was a fan of it by the end.
Yeah, I agree. The first issue I didn't like. I gave it a scathing review. I thought it was not very good at all. I didn't like the art. I thought, what was the contribution? What is this contributing to Batman lore? We've seen this before. And I think, the answer now has become clear to me. I can't emphasize enough how much better these last few issues have been. Like, books from issues 3, 4, and 5 are demonstrably better than the first 2 issues, in my view, because we actually get the character work here. If you want to, it's funny, you say this is not mainstream continuity. This actually is a very, very good encapsulation of the characters of Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, Damian, and Batman, their relationship. The interpersonal aspects of their relationship, down to the minute detail, is encapsulated very well in this issue. And in the last 2 issues as well. So if you want a good understanding of the Ra's al Ghul's family relationship to the Wayne family and the Batman mythology and legacy, read this series. Juni Ba has done a great job of sort of encapsulating it through the eyes of Damian Wayne, but really through the eyes of more than just one character. Because last issue we got it through the eyes of Talia, his mother. This issue we got it through the eyes of Ra's al Ghul, and arguably a little bit of Batman. And this is it's been very well done. Now, honestly, there isn't a single thing in this entire series that, as a longtime reader, I didn't already know. So I got to tell you, if you're a longtime Batman fan and you like Ra's al Ghul, you're not going to learn nothing from this series. But I still enjoyed reading it, especially near the end, because it was a wonderful encapsulation, reminding me just how intricate and complicated and interesting the relationship between the Ra's al Ghul, between the Al Ghuls and the Batman family is, in a way that I'm actually more interested in Ra's al Ghul, and it reminded me of why Ra's al Ghul and the Talia Ghul is such, and the League of Assassins are such compelling villains in the rogues gallery of Batman's history, because you really see why it's so interesting here, and particularly when it's focused around Damian Wayne, because he's that one connection between two families that really, in some ways, have so much in common in terms of their obsession. The Batman family obsessed with fighting crime, and Ra's al Ghul obsessed with many things, perhaps, but they both want a better world, but with very different ideas on how to achieve it. So I thought it was very well done.
Yeah. Again, like, you're right. It encapsulates who Damian Wayne is. And so, again, that's what my point. Like, I don't understand why this was Black Label, other than the stylized kind of art. Or maybe it doesn't fit in right now with the timeline. Well, we were talking about how Renee Montoya's timeline doesn't really work right now either. So, yeah, in my mind, this could have been in continuity. So, anyway. All right, last book we're going to talk about in detail, Batman 152, main story from Chip Zdarsky. Mike Hawthorne handles the pencils. Adriano Di Benedetto on inks. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. And then there is a backup story with absolutely gorgeous art. Matea D. Louise. If you guys listen to us review Kelly Thompson's The Cull, from Image, this is that same team, right? Kelly Thompson writing, Matea De Luis on art and colors, Clayton Cowell on letters, and it's a backup story on Themyscira with the Birds of Prey. So I guess that's why Kelly Thompson is writing it, but it highly ties into to what's going on in Absolute Power, which is interesting, right? Because the Birds of Prey book has been one book that hasn't tied in to Absolute Power, because they've been off in another dimension, sort of doing their own thing. Currently. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the main story? Which, in a way, I mean, I guess we should have read this before we read the
Absolute Power #3. Yeah.
The Absolute Power, because this we see Batman in the pages of Absolute Power using the Mother Box, and we saw last issue in Batman 151, that Catwoman and Batman were trying to go and steal the Mother Box, and that's the story that continues in this issue. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I thought it was really good. I have to say that I've generally speaking, I've always been Mike Hawthorne. When he came to DC, I first really became more familiar with his art when he did that Wonder Woman series with that written by Stephanie Phillips, and I thought his art was, frankly, for me personally, it wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't think it was very good, but he's gotten better. He's grown on me. He's gotten much better as an artist. And in this issue, Mike Hawthorne's art, he does a really good job. It actually shines here. He does a really good job drawing all the action scenes. And there's a lot of action for Mike Hawthorne to illustrate here. And he does it in a fairly interesting way, in a very, there's a lot of action. And really, the odds are against Batman and Catwoman here as they go against Black Alice and Deadeye. And there's a couple of other characters that quite frankly, I like how Chip Zdarsky choreographed the fight scenes. I actually thought that Catwoman, how she defeated Black Alice, was very simple yet direct. She basically tripped Black Alice off by making her lose focus. I liked how Batman, again, against all odds, managed to get one up on Deadeye. Managed to not only physically but psychologically by pointing out to Deadeye that his own mother and his own family is being sort of held. I don't know if they're dead or what, but they're in caskets there because they're on Zarnia. And Deadeye, I mean, Amanda Waller, you get more idea of just how creepy Amanda Waller is. How she manipulates her members of her own Suicide Squad and the task force. It's just really creepy. And even how they take on Bizarro, and ultimately all moving toward the end where, you know, Amanda Waller has an end game, and Batman, at the end here, Batman and Catwoman seemingly have the edge at the end, and they've got the mother box, but that's not over yet because Amanda Waller has rigged it so that, you know, if she can't have the mother box, no one can, and the mother box turns into a beacon and it attracts Darkseid. And in a really cool moment at the end, after all this action, you know, Darkseid shows up, and he, as Batman rightly points out and figures out on his own, because it's not too difficult, that they managed to escape Darkseid through the mother box, but Batman knows that Darkseid is too powerful. Darkseid let Batman and Catwoman escape. And so you got to wonder, you know, then of course they escape. Darkseid has you can just see that little grin and his glowing Omega Beam eyes. And we know that Darkseid is good. We're going to be seeing Darkseid coming up in October in DC All In with the Darkseid energy in the universe. You know, so we know that Darkseid maybe has something else planned. So it's, I love this. And so with all this action, and it was very high energy, a lot of action. Darkseid shows up. I like how Chip Zardasky made us fear Darkseid, made Batman, you know, describe Darkseid and be as fearful as Darkseid as he bloody well should be. This is another example of the appropriate elevation of Darkseid. He's not just someone floozy amongst the one of many amongst the Dark Army, like in Dark Crisis, which I thought was a disaster. I like this. And then at the end, there's even some nice quiet moments between Batman and Selina where Batman was thinking about the island that they were at during the City of Bane storyline, which was maybe problematic, but some of the aspects of the City of Bane storyline that I did like were some of the quieter moments between Bruce and Selina, which amongst my many criticisms of Tom King's Batman, he did at times have some really touching moments between Batman and Catwoman, whether it was on his rooftop storyline or when they were on the island. I recall the fantastic art of Mikel Janin, which Mike Hawthorne is, he's no Mikel Janin, but he did a good job illustrating some quieter moments here with Batman and Selina on the island as they make their way back. And we know that Batman has the mother box with him. And we know, we just finished reviewing Absolute Power #3. Batman uses the mother box, joins the fight, and uses the mother box to transport Brainiac Queen to Pluto to prevent her from screwing up the John Kent regaining his humanity. So, yeah. And really the backup is just a tie-in. It shows the Birds of Prey arriving on Themyscira prior to the events of Absolute Power that we already reviewed. But I will say that Kelly Thompson did a good job on the backup, and Matteo de Culis art and colors. I'm butchering the name, but really good art. I really like the art in the backup. But so what do you think?
The art. I mean, we know what DeLuise is capable of. Like I said, we saw it in the Cull. But now it's like I don't want anyone else to ever draw Big Barda ever, except for like she looks exactly like you would want Big Barda to look. You know, she's big and she's muscular, but she's sexy. She's just, oh my God, it just looks it's so good. It is so good. But yeah, I mean, as far as the main story goes, it's interesting, right? Like I'm talking about, it feels like the main story might be missing a little something or need a little something else, and it's these kind of moments where I get that it's a big event with a lot of people, a lot of different characters, and the various characters have to have their time in the spotlight or what have you. But you also have to have times when I feel like in the main series, it's time to focus on this character. Time to focus again. Like I know I always go back to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, I think it's maybe one of the best events that was ever done. It was sort of the first big comic book event, and so it's kind of the one that, in my mind, shows what comic book events can be and what they should be. And so that's why I always go back to that one. But when you look at that had everything, and it had, big, large scale moments with, big teams that were sent out to, break down these towers that the Anti-Monitor put in and whatever. But then other moments it was singularly focused on characters. Sometimes in a big battle with a lot of characters, it would focus in on one character, like specifically thinking about Supergirl taking on the Anti-Monitor when she gets killed, or issue 8 where it focuses on Barry Allen, who's was captured by the Anti-Monitor because he was one of the heroes just based on his abilities, who was more of a threat to Darkseid than some of the others were. And so it's stuff like that you can do in a bigger event when you have more issues that I feel like is missing a little bit in the main series. But at the same time, this book is called Batman, so don't you expect it to have a lot of Batman in it? I guess. You sort of expect him to be the star of his own book. So yeah, I get it. And Zardasky's done a great job, I think, of giving Batman his voice. He has throughout. And the other thing Zardasky's done a really good job of is tying into these other events. Like, he's been much more successful at that than like, say, Tom King, right? And we know, and Tom, he's self-professed not a good person to work with others. He kind of likes to do his own thing. So his tie-ins, Wonder Woman tie-ins tend to be a little bit weaker than what we have here. For Zardasky, it feels this is like a seamless, part of the story that he was already telling. But again, he also probably has the advantage of, Absolute Power also really focuses on Failsafe, and Failsafe was, his creation, if you will. So, it makes sense that it would make sense that it would feel like it ties in a little bit better to the story that Zardasky was already telling. So anyway, as far as trade paperbacks this week, we have Batman, Robin, and Howard Summer Breakdown. We've talked about how all 3 issues came out singularly. They already have the trade out, so if you want to just buy them all together, that is out this week. Also, Batman City of Madness, which was I think it was a 3-issue series from Christian Ward. That has its hardcover out this week as well. We've got Amazon Attacks, which collects all 6 issues of that series from Josie Campbell. That was coming out right around the same time as Tom King's Wonder Woman series was launched. We could argue how important it was or how necessary it was. It didn't feel very important or necessary, and it didn't really. I mean, I like Josie Campbell. I think she's a talented writer, but we're just talking about how Tom King says it doesn't really work that way with others. I just never saw the point of that series, and even when I had Tom on, I asked him about, well, did you talk? Did you collaborate? And he's like, no, not really. She asked a few questions, and then she went off and told her own story. So yeah, probably could skip that one, everybody. We also have Deceased War of the Undead Gods trade paperback, which collects Deceased War of the Undead Gods 1 through 8 from writer Tom Taylor. Pencils are by Trevor Hairsine in that one. Batman Year 1 is getting a box set, which collects Batman Family Year 1, Batgirl Year 1, Robin Year 1, Nightwing Year 1. It doesn't have the writers listed on that, so I'm not sure who are the writers on those particular issues. We also have Elseworlds Volume 1 trade paperback Superman, which we had the Batman one last week, or Justice League one last week. So now this is collecting a bunch of Batman Elseworld stories, although it doesn't have Red Sun, which I found to be interesting. That's one of the more popular ones. We also have Flashpoint trade paperback. If you somehow are unaware of Flashpoint or have never read it, collects all 6 issues of that series. That's out this week as well. And then we've got Harley Quinn and Gotham City Sirens in the DC Compact Comics, as well as Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo's Joker. It's also in that Compact format as well, if you're so inclined. So those are the collections that are out this week. I think there's also a facsimile issue, if I'm not mistaken. First appearance of Man-Bat that's out this week? Yeah. First appearance of Man-Bat is getting a facsimile reprint, everybody. So if you're so inclined, you can check that out. I don't have the issue number in front of me. But anyway, what's your book of the week, Rocky?
Ah, man. I'm gonna have to go with Absolute Power. Absolute Power number 3, because I enjoyed it so much. There was so much action. I thought it was so much fun. I thought Mark Waid is firing on all cylinders. I mean, the action, I love the art. I love the plotting. I feel things are building to a head, and I'm curious what's going to happen with I'm starting to actually care about what's going to happen to the Amazon robots, and what's going to happen there, and what's going to happen with John Kent. Are they going to get their powers back? I keep being reminded of your interview with Mark Waid. Maybe that some heroes aren't going to get their powers back. Some are. We got new metahumans, more heroes in the DC universe that are cropping up. Even the insignificant characters like Airwave. He might be something that Mark Waid introduced him. What's going to happen with him? I love Hal Jordan, which I didn't mention, where he brought some weapons from his series in. So it's fun. It feels different. It doesn't feel like the same old DC to me, and I kind of like that, especially going into what I know is going to be very different in All In October. So, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I contemplated picking My Adventures of Superman for the reasons I said when I reviewed it, a little Christmas in August, and I love the feel of it. But I picked it last issue, and in some series I'm like, all right, I pick every issue that comes out. But the other thing is there's another series that I thought was really well done this week that I want to give some love to. But also, I mean, based on the strength of that backup, I almost want to pick the Batman because it had all the events that I feel a little bit like the main series is missing. Plus, man, that Barda by Matea is just amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, just awesome. But ultimately, I'm going to pick Plastic Man from Christopher Cantwell because even though it's exactly what I expected it to be from Christopher Cantwell, it still was awesome. It still was so good. I don't know where it's going to go. There's still mystery. There's tragedy. There's dark humor, all the things I've come to expect from Cantwell's writing, and the art was fantastic as well. So ultimately, that's what I'm going with. I should also mention that there is one other single issue out this week that we didn't talk about. It's Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries #9. If you are so inclined, you can pick that up. And the Batman facsimile, it's Detective Comics issue 400. I don't know how I could have forgotten that was the first appearance of Man-Bat, but there you have it. All right, so that does it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in, as always. I will say that I've got so many interviews coming up, like almost, I think there's 5. I think I have 4 or 5 the rest of this week, and then next week is completely booked as well. So if you want to be sure you don't miss out on any of those, head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. If you want to listen to the audio-only version, that is available as well on wherever you get your podcasts. Just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, whatever podcast platform or app you get. If you are listening to this on audio-only and you want to see our smiling faces and check out the amazing art every week on the DC Spotlight, it's on YouTube, on Rocky's channel. It comes out late every Tuesday, early Wednesday. Comic Space Boom! Is where you need to go to find it. We appreciate the support as always. Got a lot of stuff coming for these last 3 months of the year. I'm going to be busier than ever. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know your thoughts on us scaling back on DC, maybe only doing 5 or 6 DC books a week so we can add in some other independent stuff, which would be completely separate show. So if you still want to just do DC, you would just have DC. But yeah, we're a little curious how people like what you guys would you want that, or do you want us to keep reviewing every single DC book? Yeah, we're curious what your thoughts are. So, all right, any last words, Rocky?
No, just I'm excited for October, but I'm excited for how Absolute Power is going to end in September. Here, I think it's going to be an interesting month. I suspect.
Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect way to put it. Definitely going to be an interesting month. So, anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.